Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Erik Ghenoiu. I'm the head of the Resilient Futures Task Force here at SCI-Arc and head of the Department of Research and co-coordinator of History and Theory. And my house was on Leilani Way, just off of Cheney Trail. And so I remember in the days after the fire when we realized just how bad it all was for all of us, that I got some calls from the directors of the Institute here to check on me, but also to let me know that they were thinking of what they could do to try to help. And it helped me get my head around trying to act and trying to do something other than just call the insurance company and try to figure out contacting the banks and all the things that we all had to do. And this is what we did. We started this task force. This is our second event. We're going to have more. We're going to put all of them up so that people can watch them on live stream. We've gathered hundreds of questions that people have about the rebuilding process. We're going to have all of them answered by architects, engineers, experts in different ways, and put all of it online. We're doing a study of the kind of geospatial study of the conditions of how the fire happened and what made some buildings survive and others not. And so we're studying that in every way we can think of, and we've got a team of guys working on it right now. We're going to ask if you gave us your email when you RSVP'd, we're going to be sending you a note because we're going to ask for anyone who would like to volunteer information that's more than what we can get from like Street View or Satellite View about the materials in your house, and especially anyone who saw the fire happening and saw buildings catch or burn. Any kind of information you can volunteer, we can pinpoint it on the map, and we can keep adding it to all the other voices that we can find in order to get a better and better picture of what really can help us rebuild safer and better as we move forward. So thanks so much for coming. I'm so glad to see you all here. And I just want to get right down to it. So let me introduce your moderator. Wright is the founder of Post-Fire LA, or one of the co-founders of Post-Fire LA, and has been a voice that I think a lot of you have been turning to online to find out what's going on, what's really happening with FEMA, what's really happening with the clearance of sites, like to separate the kind of truths from the hearsay. He's kind of emerged as a big voice for our neighborhood, and so we asked him to come here today to moderate the discussion with these three experts to help orient you about how to think about this process. After the talk and the question and answer, I'll come back and let you know how we're going to keep going in the afternoon. But until then, bye.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here in the worst club filled with the best people. Post-Fire is our org that we started after our house burned on 3rd Avenue, 2 blocks east of Lincoln. We're a total loss survivor household, which survivor is a weird term, but it's better than victim, so hey. Post-Fire is a centralized survivors network. We created it to try to help cut down on misinformation and translate really dense, heavy topics in calm, easy to understand language. We spent the last 2 months, my better looking half, Patty, is also my co-founder. She's sitting in the front row. If you see her, ask her the technical questions. She knows, not me. But we've spent the last 2 months on the ground talking to every survivor that we come across, which is, our membership is very large now, and overwhelmingly everyone is having the same experience. We all have fire brain. We can only really hold on to things in bite-sized chunks of information, and it's really hard to sift through what is true and what's actually helpful and what's expert guidance and what's kind of misinformation. So at Post-Fire, we're trying to cut down on that, simplify things, and ask survivors what they need. Center survivors at the center of any conversation. There's no about us without us is kind of our energy at Post-Fire. I think the measure of success after a disaster like this is the rate of rebuild and the rate of restoration, right? So our goal, all of our goal, is to get people back into their homes and get them into homes that are better than they were before, and to retain the community that built specifically At.the and built the Palisades, so that these communities can be restored to what they were before, but then also stand a chance of survival. So I also want to say that something really incredible that's been happening over the last 2 months is there's something exceptionally beautiful, which is that LA is leading the way in a communal spirit that's very unique, because we have so many talented people in this town and so many kind hearts who are coming out of the woodwork and want to help. And I want to encourage that, right? If our goal is to synthesize and translate excellent information, we need you, experts and people with skill sets, to come and bring that information so that we can facilitate it and give it to survivors. And all the people who are doing the same work we are can facilitate it and give it to survivors. So we're building a rebuild portal that will operate as like a choose your own adventure, where you can put in the specifics of your situation and it will feed back information to you based on that. So if you are a survivor and that sounds useful for you, it will be at postfirela.org soon. And if you are a person who has a skill set that could be useful to that, please email us. We want to hear from you. We want to work with you. It's resources at postfirela.org. There it is. So without further ado, I'm going to get out of the way and introduce you to these incredibly gifted gentlemen who are here to give you the guidance that I wish that I had. So first off, I'm going to introduce you to Ricardo Roldán, who is a PhD structural engineer, who's going to answer one of the more important questions people have had, which is in the debris removal process, how to deal with your structural elements that are still there, what should you do with your foundation, et cetera. We like hearing from the best, so here's the best.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. All right. Well, as I mentioned, we're also Pasadena residents, so we were very close. We're very fortunate. Our house was fine, but we're very involved in the community. Structural engineering profession is like the one that takes care of the structural part of a residence or a house, right? Sorry about that. And then what we're going to talk about today is how to build back your house, and the structural engineering questions that you may have. Obviously, any additional questions that you have, we can talk at the end. I will be more than happy to support that. The most common remaining elements after a fire are like chimneys, masonry walls, foundations, and retaining walls, right? You probably have been to your property already. You saw some of these elements around. I directed a group of from SCI-Arc, which is the Structural Engineering Association of Southern California, and then we did some reconnaissance in the area for now a couple of weeks. And then we gather some information on what make a house more resilient, less resilient, and the structural elements that survive. Just kind of full disclosure, these are my own pictures. We stay on the sidewalk all the time. I hope you don't see your residents here. If you see, just understand that we did this just from a research point of view. And then we were trying to gather information to inform these efforts and advance, the structural engineering knowledge about how this element react, right? The first topic I think that everyone have in mind is foundations. If you opt in for the Army Corps of Engineering cleanup, you have to select if you want to keep your foundation or not, right? So that's the first question you have to answer, or not the first, but it's in the middle. And it's an important decision because that will save you a lot of money or cost you a lot of money. To reuse a foundation, the authority have a jurisdiction, which would be the county or city of Pasadena or LA County for Altadena. They will require you to submit a foundation suitability report prepared by a professional structural engineer licensed in the state of California, proving that the foundation meets the requirements to support the new structure. So that's kind of the first important thing to know. I guess directed or help a group to put together a document for the jurisdictions on how to do this. And then this is public in the SCI-Arc.org website. And I recommend if you hire a structural engineer or an architect or a contractor to go to the website, give them these guidelines. So that will, the whole point is to try to make the process more efficient, save you some money, so some contractors or structural engineers or architects don't ask for additional testing, and just try to get as much information as possible with the less effort possible, right? Then some of these investigations may require destructive testing or just testing such as concrete compressive strength testing, Schmidt hammer testing, and visual observation, and seal anchor bolt testing, and hold down anchor bolt testing. That's kind of like a technical thing, but you may have to pay for additional testing that require for the assessment. The other important thing about this is that if your house was very old, especially pre-1980, it may not meet, the foundation may not meet new code. And the jurisdiction will require you to upgrade the foundation to meet the new code. So to rebuild, there's a lot of talk about like-for-like rebuild. So the like-for-like rebuild is only for zoning and planning. Jurisdictions are not taking any exception to new codes yet for building and safety. So they're going to ask you to upgrade the foundation or retrofit to meet new code. If your foundation doesn't have rebar, they're going to ask for rebar. And then if your house is like 1940, like our house, you'll struggle to accomplish this, and then you may have to retrofit. So it's probably not a good idea to keep the foundation, pay the structural engineer for a report, and then find out that you have to eventually demo the foundation or spend a lot of money retrofitting. So at that point, it's kind of just better to eliminate the foundation. Homes built before 1980 with a raised foundation, crawl space, typically will not meet current code, right? So that's important. One important point is that foundations are not only concrete, right? You also have the connection between the concrete and whatever material you put on top. Could be typically wood. It could be cinder blocks or reinforced masonry or metal studs. But then you're going to need, you can see the anchor bolts over there. Those are rusted. Those will need to be tested as well. And if they don't work, which they probably won't, you will need to drill through the concrete, add epoxy, and that can also add more cost to the retrofit if you want to keep the foundation, right? So kind of like the question I would have is, should you remove your foundation or not? So kind of the general recommendation is, if you have a large house after 1980, it will make sense maybe to hire a structural engineer to give you an opinion and how feasible it's going to be to use it, to reuse it. An older foundation pre-1980, and smaller house is probably, or I would just ask the Corps of Engineer to remove and build a brand new foundation. And it's free, right? So by the Army Corps of Engineer. So that's what we have about foundations. So chimneys is another element that typically stay. Most all chimneys need seismic retrofit. Like the chimney in our house still require a seismic retrofit just to meet new code. So to prove that a chimney meets the new code, you need to, the jurisdiction will require again, structural engineer report, so that's a decision. The Army Corps, to the best of my knowledge, is removing all chimneys unless you specifically go and negotiate with them and tell them not to. So you'll have to kind of be present or go to the disaster recovery center, talk to them and say, I don't want you to remove my chimney. So it's a little bit more complex to maintain that. Per the jurisdiction requirements, you will require a structural engineering report. And you're going to have to consider cost of retrofit. Also, the one thing that is important, and architects can talk better about it, if you want to modify your footprint a little bit, if you don't remove the chimney, you have to work around the chimney, right? So it's an existing element that you will have to deal with. And the foundation of the chimney also you need to consider. So I think I recommend, like, if you don't want to maintain your chimney for specific reasons, it's a good idea to remove it. However, if you have something in mind that you want to maintain, so it is useful to think about it. I talk about chimneys, but some other beautiful entrances and arches like that one also will need a similar study. The last thing about chimneys is that you also have to consider the flood right? And all the chimney safety that is not necessarily structural, but you may have to add lining inside and have a chimney expert come do the retrofit inside. Masonry walls. So we were talking, I was talking with with a couple before about cinder blocks, masonry walls. Masonry walls and brick walls are not combustible, so they don't collapse during a fire. They stay there, but they do require, again, an assessment report to understand if you can reuse them. You still need, the city will require a structural engineering report for this. It requires a little bit more testing than a foundation because you have to test the whole system, not only the independent units. So you have to check the masonry stability. And then it could be impractical if they're heavily damaged because then you have to retrofit them. They might not be up to code, so you have to retrofit the code. If they can resist seismic, maybe you don't have to retrofit. But if you have to do a lot of work, you're keeping the same footprint, you're keeping an old material that maybe you don't want to keep, maybe you want to keep. So the things to consider there is if you really want to keep the cinder walls or the brick walls, you need a report, and then it may be costly, right? However, if the structure seems not to be heavily damaged from the fire, the cinder blocks, then it might be cost effective. One last thing is that most installations, mechanical, plumbing, electrical installations go inside the wall, right? Here, the architects decided for some reason to have all the electrical conduits exposed, but you wouldn't do that in your house, so they will be inside. Yeah, no offense, but yeah. They will be inside the block, right? So if the wall was damaged, the element inside probably also got damaged, so you will probably need a new one, and adding new conduits in an existing wall could be complex, right? Can be done, or you can hire an architect to design something beautiful like that, right? So, last one, but not least, is retaining walls. This is a very interesting one. I understand that the Army Corps do not remove retaining walls unless they are like very small and they are on the way of the house. So this is something that you're gonna have to deal with kind of by yourself. And then it's really, my opinion is that really worth exploring if they are in good shape, because otherwise you have to pay for demolition, debris removal, and a brand new retaining wall, right? And then a brand new retaining wall, depending where you are, right? If you're in a foothill area, you may have to do complicated foundations. I don't know exactly if the county is going to be implementing new rules. I don't think so. But a full high hillside houses may require additional like anchor points, etc. So the recommendation here is that if your insurance covers the removal of the retaining wall, and then you get a quote that is cost effective to rebuild, maybe it could make sense, but otherwise, the general recommendation is to hire someone and to study if you can reuse them, and try to convince the city that it's probably a good use of your money, right? So last one, just a general conclusion, right? If you have multiple structural elements remaining in your property, you can try to lump all these assessments into one single report, and then get all the information from a structural engineer that you need to make an informed decision, right? So that you're going to be paying a little bit of money, but then you can make an informed decision. That's more applicable for larger houses where you have like larger foundations and new houses, especially post 1980. If you only have, for example, a foundation and a chimney, which is I think a common case, and your house is pre-1980, it might not be cost effective to hire a structural engineer to tell you that you have to spend a lot of money retrofitting a foundation or a chimney And then at the end, you end up paying the structural engineer and pay for a retrofit. At that point, if the Army Corps can remove for free, you might be better off and be more cost effective to just do that. Yeah, and then the last one is the city of Pasadena and the county of LA, which are the jurisdictions that serve Altadena and Pasadena, obviously, right? Just one clarification. They have two types of permits, right? One is the planning and zoning, and then the other is building and safety. All the like-for-like rebuild and the 10% applies only for planning and zoning. Building and safety, they're taking no exceptions. You need solar panels, you need fire sprinklers, and all the new code requirements. Again, that's their decision, not any of us. Actually, the solar panels is the state decision, so the LA County is lobbying the state to relax that. And yesterday, I went to talk to the county just to kind of support all this presentation, and they told me that the like-for-like rebuild, they are using 10% or 200 square feet, whatever is more. So if you have a smaller house, like 1,000 square feet, then you can increase up to 200 square feet, not only 10%, which is 100, right? So it's something to consider. That's new, and you have to talk to them because it's not in writing yet, but they say they're gonna really push for that. With that said, that concludes my presentation, and I give it back to Ayo. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so since I'm here to represent the layman, I'm going to just do a little bit of translating, which is, I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, if your foundation is before 1980, chances are probably you should get rid of it because retrofitting is very expensive. If your foundation is from after 1980 and on a very large house, you're going to want to consult a structural engineer and have them come in. You're probably going to want to consult a structural engineer for anything that you're considering keeping on your property that is any of those items he just mentioned, and retrofitting is very expensive. And we want to avoid retrofitting as much as we can, correct? More or less. Yes. Okay, so I want to point out that the debris removal process, as he mentioned, the Army Corps of Engineers doesn't take anything outside of your actual house footprint or structures larger than 120 square feet, so there is a little bit of juggling to do with the private debris removal thing, and then it does insurance and the county billing and whatever. We created a one sheet on all of this on Postfire. It's postfirela.org/debris removal. And it walks you through some of that. So if that's feeling overwhelming, we have a guide to that is pulled from all of the appropriate references and sources. So next up, we're going to hear from Mr. Steve Fierce, who is the principal architect for the city of Los Angeles and also a Eaton Fire survivor.
Oh, well, great. Thank you. I really appreciate being here. I really think these types of events, this type of event that's happening in a very unprecedented situation is really important. And so I want to be clear, though, I'm not here from the city of Los Angeles. I happen to be the principal architect of the Bureau of Engineering at the city of LA, and that gives me some insight into, there's a lot of variables that are going on through this whole process. So I bring a lot of insight here. And so one of the things what I'm really here is I'm one of the burn victims. My house burned down. I live up there off of Lake Avenue, over there by Farnsworth Park, if you all know that area. And I met some of you here tonight or today that just meeting right now, neighbors. And so right now, everything's been kind of turned on its head. Right, you're going through it, and one day everything's fine. The next day, your house is gone. Everything's gone. You don't have any clothes, you don't have anything. You're trying to deal with logistics. Where are you going to take your family? What do you do, right? You're overwhelmed, and but all of the decisions that you have to make. And so I really feel for those of you that all of us have to rebuild, and how you go about doing that, and all of the questions you have in terms of building, insurance, the logistics. People are kind of emotionally traumatized. I'll speak for myself. But so when I was asked to speak in this morning, I was trying to think about what would I say? I'm an architect. I bring that experience to it, and I wanted to try to focus on what's important. And I really, as I thought through this, what's really important is that you need help. You need help to get through this process. Building in general is difficult, but building in California is difficult, and the processes that are out there. So that's my conclusion of my talk right now. I'm gonna put it right up front. You need help, and you need an architect. I'm transparent of my bias as an architect. And I was kind of reflecting on this talk, and when I first started my career back when I graduated and I was working, one of the first offices I was working at was in Laguna Beach for an architect who really specialized in custom single-family homes, very much like what you see here, in our neighborhood, in At.the, and even, Palisades to some extent. And in 1993, they had the Laguna Beach fire. And I believe that one had 400 homes approximately that were destroyed. This is unprecedented, right? We're talking in the thousands. But at the time, I was young, I was excited about architecture and design, and I'll own my sort of lack of empathy at the time, and maybe a little bit more excitement about opportunities to rebuild. And this is going to be great, design, and we're really going to use kind of a tired phrase, rebuild back better. And and so, like I said, I own that how I felt back then. Now that it is really tragic. And but as I watched it back in '93 as a young architectural graduate, and what I saw happening as it started to rebuild, it was just a real missed opportunity. My level of disappointment was, I never forgot it. What I can kind of pull from that experience was that the architects weren't connected with the community. I don't mean it like I'm not disparaging anybody or anything. It's just by the nature of the way things are. You have a fire, and here everyone left, right? Well, I'm in Orange County right now. People are scrambling to kind of get things together, and it's even hard enough as it is to make those connections. Or how do you even find an architect? What's the appropriate fit? What's the value? But I think with the '93 Laguna fire, what happened was that people are homeless and they're just getting bombarded with information, whether it's their insurance companies, but also contractors and builders. There's even back then there was a lot of discussion about prefab or modular, and so people don't know how to work the process. And so that's why I really want to kind of point out that you really need to you need help. And I'm really encouraging the architects, that is their trade, that's their profession. When I again, I'm kind of referencing some of my stories, but when I started, I thought, well, what is an architect? It's a designer. I had these visions of Frank Lloyd Wright, his cape and his cane and all that kind of stuff. It was really cool. But actually, as I got into the profession and realized, design is why I got into it. It's extremely important. Design is what we need to rebuild back our communities. It'll be tragic if that gets lost in this process. But at the same time, an architect is actually, a designer, but also, we're a service industry, and there's a degree of shepherding our clients that they've never built before. So architects build, that's what we do over and over. We design, we collaborate with builders. But as an owner, this might be your only time you ever build. And in this particular case, you're being forced into it under duress. And so you need someone that's going to be able to walk you through the steps. And so I'm really encouraging to everyone we want to get back in, you want to build, and is to kind of slow down and take a breath. I know we want to go in quickly, and again, I'll own it. When this fire first happened, the first thing I did, I went out and bought a computer, set up my workstation, I started drawing. And so I have, I did move ahead. I'm starting that process. I was fortunate I had some documentation of my house that I was able to kind of cobble together, and I'm already in the process. I've submitted my plans through the portal, which is an Epic LA at the LA County. So Palisades is LA City, and so Eaton Canyon largely is through LA County. And so basically that process is difficult. Where I can bring my experience working with the city to bear here a little bit is that from the architect side and the owner side, you go into this process and you feel like you're getting stonewalled, and this website is just impossible to get through. And I didn't even do it right the first time. I loaded all my stuff up, and I was like, I don't know, maybe I got it, and it turned out I didn't. It was like stuck. And in terms of the helper, I have, my wife and my family has been great. I give them a list of questions. I send them up here to this center where they have they've set up to help you out, and she unblocked it. Stood in line over there, met with the planners, and said, "What's going on with it?" They looked at it and said, "Oh yeah, he dumped this thing in the wrong folder." And so. It's this process. You have to sort of take it slow, and I have to kind of guard myself here a little bit. I have a tendency. I can go off into the weeds real fast. There's so many aspects to this. So I'm looking forward to the Q&A session where maybe we can kind of tackle some of these questions. But again, I wanted to just maybe leave you with the need for an architect to really partner with you, help you out. When you start the project out, you really need to set your goals. So people are starting to decide, someone's told me I can put a prefab on it and I can be done in 6 months, or that may be good, but then there's some great prefabs out there. It's a complicated question though, it's not just so simple. And you really want to hire somebody who can partner with you. And so if you have in your mind, I want to do, a prefab, or I want to do a steel start. You've got things in your mind about how you might save some money, how you might go faster. I am really encouraging that partnering early right now with a design professional who can help you get through and plan it. So you want to be able to know what your goals are, what your objectives, and that's how you frame up the work that you're going to do. I know we're talking about you can add 10% to your square footage of your house. I mean, that's great. But again, you want to also keep in mind, what can you afford to build? And so you want to work, there's a process of working back and forth. Develop your schedule, develop your budget, develop your goals, what you want to do. So anyway, I think I'll leave it there. Maybe the last comment I'll make here would be that, we're all devastated. It's hard for me to comprehend almost the entire city. I've lived there for almost 25 years or so, that is gone. And it's just the war zone up there. I'm sure you all, you know what I'm talking about. And, but what does that mean to rebuild back? That's a big question. You put all this effort in, I'm gonna rebuild, but what's it gonna be? And so we don't know, but I actually is really important. That's why these meetings, this bringing everyone together, helping each other out to get on the right path forward, so we don't have a missed opportunity. We don't end up not having rebuilt it back, positively and better. And so yeah, I'll leave it at that. And again, I want to thank everyone. I really appreciate you guys setting this forum up to help information, and the your website was I didn't know about that one. That sounds really good portal. So I'm looking forward to the Q&A. So thank you, everyone.
The thing I think that happens after these things is that we feel like we have to reinvent the wheel and do things on our own. And a helpful thing that was told to me, thank you so much, this exemplifies my point. There are people who are better at things than we are who can help us with stuff. I'm imagining that if you're here, you're already interested in the idea of an architect, or maybe could imagine hiring an architect. I know there are a lot of people in this boat with us who have never considered that an architect is within the realm of feasibility. like I mentioned at the top, there are an extraordinary amount of incredibly talented, kind, generous people who've come forward offering resources. And one of those resources is a vast swath of LA who are design professionals, licensed architects, licensed designers, and builders and engineers and contractors who are coming forward saying that they want to give time pro bono, they want to give time discounted. So if you're considering this and you're wondering to yourself, how could I ever afford that? Know that those things are available. And if you don't know how to access them, there are plenty of ways to do that. One of them is through us. You can go to postfirela.org. There's a survivors network on there. It's free. We are a not-for-profit organization. You can join that and you will get that direct access to many of those design professionals, but seek them out because there are a lot of architects and engineers who want to help and who are offering those things for free. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel all by yourself. I know I went to that place immediately. I was like, well, now I have to figure out how to be an architect and a contractor, and maybe I should get my contractor's license. No. Actually, there are people who are really good at that, who've been doing this for a long time, who are like, hey, let me help. So I would encourage all of us to take that help. Okay, so now to touch on the topic of the moment, fire itself. Mr. Nate Wittasek is a certified fire expert and former pyromaniac who is going to come up and he's going to talk to us about fire itself and defensible materials and choices that we can make around how to build more resilient communities and homes so that this doesn't happen in the same way again.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out today. You can call me Nate. So I have spent my whole life almost being very intimate with fire through my young life into my professional life. From firefighting to research to education and the built environment. I think if I had one message today that I could give to you, it's not only can we live with fire the way it's affecting us, but we can actually thrive in a fire adapted community. And so that's some of what I want to share with you today. I'll talk a little bit about the immediate aftermath, the things that families from example, my school were concerned about, and then what does it mean to be fire resilient? And the reason I want to talk about those things is, number one, people want to know, like, can I go back? You know, are my kids going to be safe? Are my grandkids going to be safe? My friends have the same questions. So this is a very personal issue. The other reason is, if you're going to rebuild, now is the time to make critical decisions in how you approach it. So we know that this fire was unique in a sense because it occurred in an area with a high density of homes, and that actually is the playbook for what we predict most future fires of this nature will be. The state is actually reorganizing the maps to include much more of these populated areas for that reason. We know that strong winds like the Santa Anas fuel these dry conditions. This is the new norm in Southern California. I think, the last couple of years were wet, and that created a whole bunch of new vegetation, which then had the opportunity to dry out. You add the winds in, and next thing you know, we have the situation we're in. Almost 10,000 structures, 6,000 homes were destroyed, and the losses financially that we can count are staggering. The causes of these fires are largely man-made, and it's not that they're arson per se. It's maybe 9 to 20%, depending upon your location, that could even be classified as arson, but it's things like, power sources, it's things that are accidental many times, but over 84% of these fires are human-caused. With respect to our air quality, everyone immediately after the fire was concerned, obviously, and we have very good mechanisms for measuring that. We think of anything under 100 as pretty reasonable, but if you were in LA in the 70s, you generally would have been well over that. That being said, there are other concerns that folks are looking at. Now, first of all, should you be in an area where there is a high AQI, meaning it's not healthy, the things you need to think about, obviously, are purification of your air and sealing your windows, trying to reduce your outdoor activities, and keep your eye on it. There are apps out there that are wonderful for that. I think every one of us probably was introduced to Watch Duty, for example. But it's the things that the AQI doesn't monitor that we now have to be concerned about as we get involved with the rebuild process. So these burning homes are different from wildland fires. We release toxic metals from paints, from pipes. I mean, we all understand that these elements are consumed in such large fires. We have asbestos considerations in some older buildings, and they become particleized. And then they go into the water and the plastics as well. So how do we deal with that? We have soil contamination, and we know that this is why, in fact, we're removing that top layer, because not only is it a problem when it's exposed to you, and everyone reacts differently, but it could be a problem if it was taken up in the biomass. And this is where our kids play, this is where we live our life. So this is what we do. We replace soil, we clear it, we assess it. The same with the water, and downstream by the ocean, that's where we're going to be dealing with this for years. We have the ability to monitor the AQI, but again, it's much more difficult to understand soil and water contamination. So we do have to rely on the authorities. When there are signs that say don't drink the water, that's because it's been shown that you can't have the purity of the water, obviously, to be safe. So we should take those things very seriously. Areas remote from the fires will get chemicals, dioxins, volatile organic compounds, and those spaces as well will be monitored for the same reasons. I want to put a little context into the rebuilding process. It is not a fast process, and so it's important for you and your family that you prepare yourself for what this can be. And the goal is to become the percentage that can build their home in a timely fashion. Looking at studies of past wildfire events, we can see that, for example, from the 2018 Camp Fire, 32 out of 14,000 structures have been rebuilt. That's 23%. In the Carr Fire, 396 out of 1,100 structures were rebuilt within 5.5 years. That's 36%. And we only have 6 out of 2,000 structures from the 2023 Maui fire that have been rebuilt. Some of this is good, though, because this is an opportunity for you to plan. The most important things you can do at this moment, having gone through the process of building a house, of trying to understand plans, all of this, even though it's my profession, it took a decade for me to finish this the right way with everything from start to finish. And one of the key decisions that you'll end up making is, who is your contractor? Do they know what they're doing? Can you work with your architect? If you hire an architect, and I can't emphasize and re-emphasize enough how important that is. It's a challenging environment. So take advantage of those resources that are out there today, because that will make your life infinitely better. They say that building a home is one of the more stressful events in your life, next to losing it or losing a loved one. So let's do the right things and pull in the help, because when you're not alone in the process, it makes a world of difference. The process, laying it out, if all goes well, it's maybe a 4 to 5 year process. You get through your initial safety and damage assessments, your debris removal and site cleanup. Permitting and rebuilding can take anywhere from 3 to 18 months, even in an expedited environment. We still, at the same time, will be restoring infrastructure. That takes time. Power, water systems have been damaged. And then construction, 12 to 36 months, is pretty typical. In final inspections, it may take up to 48 months. And this is what you need to steel yourself for. So as you make those plans, look to the resources that are available to you. There's resources like NFPA Firewise, which is a community-based organizational plan for fire-adapted communities. What it means is they educate the entire community and bring you together on what you can do, because you've by now all heard, listen, if you protect your home and your neighbor doesn't protect their home, what does that portend? It's not good news. So when we're thinking about what we have to protect against, the number one threat is embers. And then radiant heat. What's radiant heat coming from? Well, it's coming from the house next to you. It's coming from the fence right next to your home or the bush that's too close to your home. And then that causes what we call impingement, which is direct flames that touch your home. Whoops. Looks like we lost presentation. While this is coming back up, I'll say that there are many, many architects who understand inherently how to build fire-resilient structures. These structures are sometimes structures that have minimal openings. This photograph was a meme photograph designed by an architect. It was more of a passive design, but it has some very simple elements that you should be including in your home. It doesn't allow for embers to easily collect. It has windows that are tempered. It has surfaces on the roofs that will shed embers, and you'll notice that it didn't have a whole lot of vegetation around it, which is perhaps one of the most important things you can do. I want to show you a video that's important to see. So on the right side, we have a home that is following a few basic rules, and this comes from the IBHS. It's called Wildfire Prepared Home. Let's see if we can get it back. There we go. Look at the difference in how just minor things, I know you're on the edge of your seats here. Don't worry, it's like Netflix. We can go back to the beginning, and we will. Okay, we're back. So the house on the right has features like setbacks from vegetation, windows and eaves that are protected, tempered glazing. You'll notice the house on the left has a fence directly touching the house, which is very common. That fence serves as a piloted ignition or direct impingement source when the embers are blowing flame and into the house itself. And next thing you know, the entire outside of the structure is burning. And what's interesting about fire protection is we haven't traditionally tried to protect homes from the outside in. We've tried to sprinkler from the inside out. But now we need to be thinking about both of these things. So when you rebuild your home, you will have to sprinkler it on the inside. That's the state laws now. But if you do some simple things, you don't even have to use exotic solutions on the outside. You can see this very clearly in this video. Can I truly be safe? The answer is yes, and I firmly believe that. By implementing wildfire-resistant construction, first of all, it need not cost extra money. Some studies have shown you can even save up to 2% by making choices that are fire resilient. The truth is, with architectural solutions, it likely will cost more, but it need not. And this is coming out of studies by Headwater Economics and similar sources. If you only look at your structure and do the right things like putting in tempered glazing or similar, you can get up to a 40% reduction in loss. If you then look at the environment around your home, be smart about your vegetation, provide the 5-foot separation and thin out the trees nearby, don't connect the fences, you can get up to a 70%. And in some cases with other systems, if you wish to elect active systems, you can get that up past 90%. So we don't live in a perfect world. We always live with some risk, but these numbers are pretty good. And you can actually feel very good about 90+% resilience if you do simple things that we know how to do, but that we just haven't been focused on because our environment hasn't required it of us in the past. So I will say that there are many things we can and should be doing. There are resources out there that we can look to in the county and elsewhere, and these types of resources will be posted on the website that we've been discussing today. But these are the things you want to bring to your architect. And I have found that the architects, the professionals in Los Angeles are amongst the best in the world, and they are learning very rapidly. So take advantage of that learning and thrive in your new home. Thank you.
Can we get this? Oh, hello. Hi. I'm moving around the stage. Okay, so to recap that, again, in layman's terms, the big headline that I heard that I found calming as a fire survivor is that it's possible to live in fire-safe communities that are more resilient. They're built to withstand this, because I'm sure that you, like I, after your house burned to the ground, thought, uh-oh, do I have to leave California? I don't want to leave California. I don't want to leave At.the. So it's really heartening to hear that there are fire-safe ways to exist in this environment. And then the other big headline that I heard was hire professionals to help. And there are incredible resources available, but it is layered and very technical, and you want to do it right. And there are some simple things to do. And I also heard that it's possible to do it within affordability, which is another big thing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to open this up to a Q&A. I have some questions here that you submitted ahead of time that I'm going to pull from to give you a beat to gather your questions, and then there will be somebody walking around with a microphone who will gather your questions. And then after that, we're going to get to the real meat and potatoes, extra meat and potatoes, which is that there will be architects all lined at all of these tables and all out there at those tables to answer your individual questions. There's also going to be some food in the next room. So we'll do about an hour of this, and then you can feel free to go back and go talk to an architect, and then we'll talk about the process for that afterwards. So for now, let's give a round of applause to these gentlemen and thank them for their expertise. These are questions that came in from people who are not in the room and some who are, but mostly from verified survivors, which we tried to focus on people who are survivors first. Okay, so a lot of, this first question is for you, Ricardo. There are a lot of private debris removal companies in At.the right now talking to people about they're positioning it as it's careless to take a foundation, and they're kind of pushing people towards the idea that they should leave their foundation. So can you just like revisit the foundation conversation and talk about maybe also the pressures that private debris removal companies might be putting on people for profit reasons that they should be wary of?
Is the mic on right now? You can hear me? Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, about private debris companies, I'd like to be very careful about it. They promise a lot, right? They promise being fast. They promise to be fast. They're super cheap. It's not that you cannot use them. You just have to make sure that you have everything in writing with a very strong contract that you can defend yourself. So if they come and tell you, I can get this done in 2 weeks for $20,000, no change orders, get it in writing, and don't accept any change orders, right? That's that's kind of the main topic. They will push probably to make more money, so either keep the foundations because it's faster for them. If you remove the foundations, they have to find a place to dump the concrete, and then it has to be certified. The county needs to accept that. And it is a different permit process that takes a little bit longer just to get that from if you are not the Army Corps, right? So the Army Corps they have that figured out with the county. As a private debris removal company, you'll have to have a lot of hoops, right? Now, again, I think regarding the specific questions about what to do with the foundation, the advice, at least my personal advice, stays like if you have a large house, relatively new, 1980s or newer, maybe it makes sense to, instead of talking to the debris company, talk to a structural engineer and ask, hey, what do you think about this? And you can even talk to them like without paying for the first time, right? And they can tell you, yes, maybe it's worth exploring or maybe it's not. If it's an older house, definitely 1940s, like my house, or even older than that, smaller footprint, probably it makes sense to remove the foundation. Now, if you opt out of the Army Corps of Engineers, is when you start to doing math, right? Because you either get that covered by your insurance or not. That the policy has a specific debris removal clause. So if you're not covered, you're going to be paying out of pocket. So I will consider maintaining the foundation there because you have to pay for the debris removal of the foundation at that point. If your policy covers that, then at that point it's kind of the same as the Army Corps is covered, and then I will consider that. So it depends if you opted in or out. If you opted in, I will definitely just remove the foundation. Again, with the debris removal company, make sure that they get all the permits, that you are going to have to go after the county to get the permits, right? Because make sure that they're in charge of all that. Otherwise, they're going to blame you for delays because they say like, well, you are in charge of getting the permit. The county doesn't allow me to dump where I want. So make sure that they are in charge of everything and you just like pay them and get everything in writing.
I also want to point out that it was brought to my attention by At.the, which is one of the leading post-fire experts, wildfire experts in the country, that there may be things that you will have to present to prove the structural soundness of your foundation. If you were to resell your house, it could affect your resale value. If you rebuild on an existing foundation that has suffered through a burn, there are various things to consider also on that front and to investigate when making that decision. This question says, as we are discussing the ways to rebuild safely and more fire resilient, how will the race to rebuild Altadena quickly and affordably conflict with our need to build more resilient, which is also a question that's come up kind of on ecological level. Obviously, it's not ideal for the earth to just have everyone go in and like scrape a bunch of soil out and like plop up brand new houses. But then on the other hand, you have people who can't afford to wait because we're all homeless for the next potentially 4 to 5 years. So I guess whoever wants to speak to this, the conflict between quickly and affordably and our need to build more resilient. Maybe Nate?
Yeah, I would say that one of the big challenges when you're trying to do something quickly is you don't think through doing it differently. And in this moment, we should be thinking about doing things differently. If you hire someone, it's like this in all of our lives, you get used to doing something and you like to do it, you get comfortable. If you're a contractor, you build it the way you've always built it. And at this moment, though, we should be spending a little extra time to specify in the features that we need. And the good news is the codes have gotten us there to some degree. Houses that were built under the new wildland urban interface codes inherently have a much higher survival rate than those that were not. But don't just accept the status quo, because that's what's cheapest, because that's what people are most comfortable with. And
I can add to that, to the foundation-specific topic. Yeah, it's not ideal for the environment to remove your foundation, right? That's a lot of debris, it's a lot of waste. So to that point, it's also an important decision that you need to make, and a personal decision, if you want to go fast, more cost effective, etc., right? Or if you value also kind of like the sustainability aspect, is something that you have to decide. But there is definitely a sustainability impact in removing foundation and building brand new concrete, right? There's no question about it.
I don't have the stats on hand about how many foundations in the Eaton Fire, or in At.the specifically, are raised foundations versus concrete foundations, but I believe that they're mostly raised foundations. So I don't know, there's something to think about there. Obviously, the concrete being the deciding factor, which is our next question. Ricardo, you mentioned that concrete and masonry as being non-combustible materials. If we're trying to think sustainably, and concrete is one of our world's biggest polluters, what other materials could be used instead of concrete that aren't combustible, and how accessible are those materials in price and specialized labor?
Thank you for that question. I actually talked to the county yesterday about like straw bale. I mean, everything is in the code. Adobe, other earth materials that they allowed in the code. Those are available, not necessarily cost effective right now because there's not a lot of demand or offer, right? So it's kind of like a niche architecture, I think, that you'll need to kind of find the material, and is a little bit slower. There are no like a lot of prescriptive details that you can follow to kind of go faster, like he was mentioning, right, the Chapter 7A from the California Building Code, they have very prescriptive details about how to build fire-resilient structures, but it's mainly with like most commonly used materials. So it is an option. You will need a little bit more of work from your architect and your engineer to get a permit or get it approved by the city. Definitely more sustainable than not necessarily, well, obviously concrete, but I mean, if you build in stucco and wood, still more sustainable than that. They tend to be, I think, you can build resilient with these materials if you do it the right way, right? But definitely need like outside the box thinking, and you need to find an architect that is willing to take on that risk, and not risk, on that challenge, and an engineer as well. So it can be done, right? And I do encourage you to think about it. Sit with your professionals and ask these questions. Say, hey, I want to do this. Can we go? Can you give me a cost comparison? How much is just like a standard house, rebuilt following other Chapter 7A or just minimum code, or this different because I care more about sustainability, and then get like a cost estimate and see if you're willing to take that cost difference, right?
Could I add to that?
Yeah.
I think you also have to think about life cycle. Concrete has its issues, right, in terms of environmental impact, and it's called out as a big issue in the building industry, but it also is incredibly resilient in a fire. And personally, I find concrete to be, in the grand scheme of things, if you're in an area of high risk and that house doesn't burn down because you chose a non-combustible material, that may pan out better in the overall life cycle of that family home. So that's a different point of view. It's not, the only point of view, but just throwing it out there, I think you could think about it in a couple of different ways.
This next question plays into this. So I think this may be for all of you. There's a lot of Altadena residents that had homes with very specific architecture, mid-century homes, for example. Can you speak to innovations in design, materials, sustainability practices, and fire resilience while keeping a period home like mid-century modern sensibility that is common in this area?
Okay, sure, I'll give it a crack on that one. I'll try. I guess my kind of gut reaction to that a little bit is that I wouldn't necessarily let materials or these drive the design of your house. I mean, I think you want to build back how you want to live, what kind of environment you want to be in, the type of design that those features that are meaningful to you and for the neighborhood. I think one of the wonderful things about Altadena was that, and one of the reasons I liked it is history and the eclectic nature of it, you know, it had a real character. You know, you'd have a little 800 square foot house next to a 4,000 square foot house or something, one of those old estates, you know, that were kind of carved up over the years. And so, and the mid-century modern. You know, for me, I think that's kind of, you just build, you're going to want to build those resiliency factors in, sustainability factors in. All of that's going to be in the design that you're going to try to achieve. So maybe there's more to add. You guys want to add some more about that, but I just wouldn't consider that to be a limiting factor. I don't see that right now in the technologies we have with design. I don't see it in the restrictions in the code. You know, I think you can achieve what you want to do. And again, that kind of brings me full circle to the point I was making, is that if you're really trying to bring a high level of design excellence to your rebuild, you do need the expert. You need the architect. You need to work with them, communicate those ideas to them, what's important to you. I spent countless hours when I was a long time ago, and I would be designing single-family residential homes, and you know, at the kitchen table, sorting out with the owners, you know, what's important to you? What do you want? You know, give me those design principles. So some people would come to me and say, I want a mid-century modern. Some people say, I mean, you name it, right? But you can accomplish that. I wouldn't consider it a limiting factor.
Yeah, so some of the most beautiful homes that I've ever seen are some of the most fire resilient homes. The technologies have pushed us towards things like double tempered energy resistant windows, which are incredible at resisting infrared energy, for example. That's the same energy from a fire that can cause your house to catch on fire. But with modern windows that you will be required to put in, you're going to get a huge level of protection. You shouldn't have to think you're going to live in an ugly little bunker. You can live in a beautiful home that first should be driven by the architecture, because the materials, the technology is there. We just have to implement it.
Thank you. Are there questions from the audience that are in the room? Great. So if we can get a mic to you, and in the interim, I'm going to ask another one from here, and then we'll go straight to you. Stephen, can you, a lot of what's being proposed for people in At.the lower on the affordability spectrum are prefab options, or kind of like modular, choose your own factors, but it's really all prefab. Can you speak to the question directly is, can you speak to the pros and cons of choosing a prefab house versus traditional construction, including costs, permits, and construction time?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert in prefab or manufactured homes or modular. There's these various terms for it. And, you know, there are good solutions there. What I do know about it, though, is that you want to make those decisions informed. And because there's a lot of factors involved in it, whether it's really appropriate for your site. You know, a lot of people, you hear prefab, you think, oh, this is being manufactured in a factory. The quality's great. They're going to bring it out, and it's going to go up in 3 days. Well, you still have all of the other procedures that you're doing. It's all the same activities are basically happening. They're just kind of happening in different places. So you're still going through permitting for your site, bringing in your utilities. You have to build foundations. So if you are doing like a modular type of design, you know, you may need to have that craned in. There may be site restrictions, how this is going to be, you know, assembled. There's, in terms of costs, over the years, I've had a lot of people come to me that wanted to save money in doing prefab, and by and large, I don't see a huge savings there. Maybe there's some time involved in the overall construction of the project, but there's trade-offs. So you kind of have to, you're buying a product, and there's so many products now. There's a lot more modular and prefab, you know, providers out there. Again, I'm not an expert in it, so when you're choosing your architect. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to do prefab, I don't need an architect. I would not go that route. I would really still recommend you have your architect to help you through your building process, regardless of the building methodology or typology that you're having done. They can carry you up through the process and help you coordinate the design of the product that you want. They might help you do research on it. And again, I think there's other issues about, I think somebody brought up earlier, insurance and what is that product? What is the code process? So, again, navigating through building approval processes for this, you have a product and you've got to get that through. So is it a certified, so you need to have somebody doing the homework for you to understand if this is going to work. So it's the short answer, I guess the long answer, it could be a good solution. I'm not sure it's going to really save you a lot of money and maybe not a lot of time, maybe a little bit of time, but you definitely still need to go through the sort of rigorous process of understanding what you're doing and not just jump into it because somebody has come along and said, somebody's coming out here and I'm selling these, I've got these great products, and they show the brochures, they show you all these projects that are built, and they're beautiful. There's some really cool ones. But you don't want to make a decision to buy that and say, yeah, let's go. You really need to go through the process, and that's why I was really recommending at this point in the process, just slow down a little bit, make sure you're collecting the right steps to move forward so you have informed decisions.
If I can add one thing, so you're still not going to need a foundation, right? So the manufacturer vendor won't provide that typically. And the other one is there's a difference between mobile homes and pre-manufactured homes. So mobile homes follow, I think, Title 25. Whatever your solution you're looking, make sure that you ask the vendor, the salesperson, that they confirm and put in writing that they are going to meet the local jurisdiction, either Pasadena or Altadena, LA County, until they are satisfied, right? Because they may say that they'll meet CBC or whatever. LA County has specific amendments for pre-manufactured homes, same as Pasadena. I think you need fire sprinklers. If you're in a fire zone, you still have to follow Chapter 7A. And they may not consider that. They might just try to sell the house quickly and then promise that you're going to be living there in a week or something. Make sure that you get in writing that is for your address, for your jurisdiction, and for your needs. And I'll say, don't jump into it right away, meet with them, ask how are you going to solve the code requirements for my specific situation, and then put it in the contract, and then what the time is as well, right? They need to get a permit for the footing as well with the county or the city. So it's not as fast as they typically tend to promise. But again, as he was mentioning, if you get everything in writing and everything makes sense and is relatively cost effective, then there's nothing wrong with that, right? You just have to make sure that you cover your bases, and then they don't come back and tell you that they didn't consider the LA County amendments, and then now you have to pay $50,000 more to add fire sprinklers, right? Which happened in the past.
Right, and you may, with prefab, there's some adjustment, but you may not be able to keep your foundation and expect that it will look like how you want it to look. So that's another cost that may be outside of the number that you're provided.
I hear an added cost and my brain goes, whew, and then I think about the fact that there's an architect whose job it is who could help me through this process and guide me through those things, and then I calm back down. That's just me though. Sir, in the back. Yes, your question. The gentleman behind you had his hand up first, actually, in the white shirt, bald, you, very handsome fellow in the white button down.
Oh, is it working? Okay. So I'm an architect, and this is a two-part question. They both have to do with zoning and planning. One of them is coming from me, and one's coming from my client that I just met yesterday. So it's half me, half a survivor question. The first thing has to do with the footprint of the house. Who defines what the footprint is? Is it the footprint of the foundation? Is it the roof line footprint? Is it what the city has on record as far as the footprint is concerned? The biggest thing is that they're telling me that they have a 3,500 square foot house, but when I pull up the parcel information, it says 3,000 square foot. So where exactly do we define that footprint? They also opted out of Army Corps to remove the foundation, so it's still there. Do I need to survey the existing footprint? What if they remove it? How do I get access to that? Because what if there's no foundation to look at to actually get the footprint? So my first question is, what exactly is that footprint? And then second question is, and they want to rebuild their their one-story house as a
Wait,
two-story
before we get to
house.
the second question, because I won't be able to remember all
Okay,
of this.
let's do that one first.
So the first part of the question, I just want to clarify, is your question about what the Army Corps defines as the footprint, or what the building department does?
The building department.
The building
right?
department, as far as the
Okay.
whole 10% aspect.
I can. So what I was told by LA County and City of Pasadena is that they're gonna count the square footage in the LA County tax assessor. So that's gonna be the definition of your existing square footage. The footprint is not that important, so you can change the footprint if you want a like-for-like rebuild, as long as you don't exceed 10% or 200 square feet. However, the important, I think, part of the question as well is if you are grandfathered into a non-compliant boundary, like setback with your neighbor, that's when you probably, I don't recommend this, but you may want to take advantage of keeping that border, right? If you are 2 feet from your neighbor, some people may want to do that. And then if you don't do like-for-like rebuild, you cannot do that. You have to go 5 feet or depending on your zoning. And that will be defined by a surveyor, right? Or the county will try to use pictures or whatever they have on record. Just to clarify another question, the county doesn't have any drawings, I think pre-2021, since they started like the digital part. So they don't have, by law, they don't have to keep any records. So they don't have drawings. They have records of like the surveyors, right? But yeah, so short answer from the county is that is the square footage in the LA tax assessor website. And then you can actually move your house around. You don't have to build in the exact same place. Obviously, if you want to keep the foundation, you have an option, but you don't have to build in the exact same place, right?
Yeah, this is really important because how many of you have been camping and you put your feet up by the fire and you're roasting your marshmallows, and at the end of the night, your sneakers are melted, right? Like that's happened. What happens with, why you may want to consider maybe even moving your house is if you're very close to the house next to you. Now, sometimes you don't have the option, but if you have an option to be a little bit farther away, radiation falls off on an exponential basis. Every foot you get makes a huge difference. So if you can do a small adjustment, the reason why this fire was particularly bad wasn't necessarily because of the wildland per se, but it was because of the houses all around that were now burning because of the spot fires. So if you have the chance to avoid that radiation exposure, by all means do it.
In light of that, just before we come back to the second question, which I did remember we have a second question, if you're wondering how to know what your neighbors are doing, I want to point you to something called the neighborhood captain model, which I mentioned an org called After the Fire. They created this model. It is basically a system where a zone or a block or a neighborhood elects a captain, and that person is a person who is probably good at spreadsheets and remembering things, and they go, and it's their job to track down all of the neighbors in their zone and make sure that everybody gets credible, quality information, and that you all know each other so that you can make decisions with your neighbors. There's also like collective bargaining capacity there. There's a lot of, very valuable information if you can talk to your neighbors about where they're building, what contractor they're using. Maybe you can bundle up on debris removal or contractors or whatever and get cheaper materials, et cetera. One org that's doing that is called Altogether, ALTA, and we also have a fair bit of that connectivity functionality at Postfire. So if you want to connect with your neighbors, we can help facilitate that. Okay, handsome gentleman in the white, your second question, please.
Second question has to do with building an ADU in addition to the house, and how that whole 10% plays in. So if, let's say, they have a 3,000 square foot house and they're allowed to build 3,300 square feet, does that include the ADU? Would the ADU can be considered an ADU, or would it be a guest house? if there's no main residence that it's connected to? You know what I mean?
So typically not the ADU. It could be detached or attached, but if it's detached, it doesn't include that. The ADU laws didn't change, right? And the city or the county is really not doing anything different. The only thing that they actually told me yesterday that they were allowing people to do is to build your ADU before your main house. You do have to permit it at the same time, so you have to go to the permit office with both set of drawings, but then you can get final and live in the ADU before you even start building the main house or during the process. You have, I think, 5 years to finish the main house, but that's really the only main difference when compared to the rest of the laws, right? That there are, or the ordinances that the LA County is implementing. I'm not sure about Pasadena, but I think they will follow a similar approach because that idea came from the state, right? And then just so you know how codes work, the state defines a minimum code requirements. Local jurisdiction can only make requirements more strict, but they cannot relax. So if the state requires solar panels, LA County cannot eliminate them by themselves. They need to ask the state, or they can request more solar panels, right? This is kind of a bad example, but they can request more coverage of solar panels. They can just be more strict. So the counties also like have their hand tied about how to relax things.
That's a very important thing to note. Okay, you also have a microphone in your hand, is that correct?
Yes.
Let's have it.
Am I on? Oh, okay. So before I ask the specific question, I would like to share some thoughts that or information I got from a Caltech presentation from a wildfire modeler professor, which was really interesting. So At.the basically started with a wildfire, as I understand it. And they are now capable of modeling this process down to like within a couple 100 feet of the perimeter and how the fires will develop. This was not possible until this guy figured it out. And so what are the parameters? I should probably also say, as a scientist, I like to rebuild fact-based foundations. And so this guy basically said it was important to catch the right parameters. And there are three very important ones. One is ignition. That's very important. How do you ignite a fire in a spot? Second one is fuel. How dense of a fuel, how hot can it burn? And the third one is transport of embers or of fire-carrying materials. And so they can't really currently model the urban fire that we experienced up in our community. And so this is really complicated. And so at the end, I asked him, well, what is your conclusion? How should we rebuild? And he said, well, I can tell you how not to rebuild. And that was really impressive. He said he still doesn't understand why we use lumber in our walls still. And that spurred a whole kind of thinking in my head over the last couple of weeks. Day and night thought, what could you do? So essentially, I feel like if we not all get together and do the right thing this time, basically recapitulating your thought, then what good is it if I build fire resilient, if my community, and so I'm like a really bad community builder, so I'm a good scientist, hopefully, but I'm trying to figure this out. And so I'm super happy that there are some experts on that level trying to do the community building thing. And I finally feel I found the right place here. So big applause to you guys. However, my question now, very specific. So my brain basically forced me into light gauge metal structural construction. And the amazing thing is that I found now you have actually software plugins that allow you to spit out a framework automatically. You just draw your house in Revit or whatever you use, and it spits out the metal frame. Then you bring it to your local specialist, and they print out the metal beams and make them into panels for you. And you can assemble that house supposedly within not even a week, like a big house. That's what they promise. And I finally found a little company that does that. And so my question is, what is your guys' take on that technology? Because it's very different from what we have been doing, but it has, in my brain, it kind of lights up and says there's some promise here.
I'll touch on it from an architectural standpoint, and then maybe you can touch on it from the metal standpoint. Just from an architectural standpoint, though, that's metal's non-combustible and essentially, but it's it burns. But framing is 10% of the project, right? There's all these other components, and so that's one of the things I think that may happen depending on who you're talking with. Here's a kit, it goes quickly, you can put it all together, but there's so many other components that need to be coordinated in the design. There's the systems and all of this, and so a lot of times that's just not there. And if that's not thought through, you might end up doing framing that's gonna actually get in the way and impede things, and you'll have to then change it, and you might have impacts. So from a design coordination standpoint, that's one component of many, and that's why it's just really important to have your team that can advise to help you avoid any kind of stumbling blocks. But I'll turn it over to Nate regarding combustible metal.
Yeah, combustible metal.
Yeah.
There is combustible metal, actually, interestingly, plenty of it. Remember the old Volkswagen engines that would burn? I mean, for real. But that's not what we're talking about. What I am saying, or what I think is worth saying here, is that number one, we want to be careful with the turnkey process, because I would echo, yeah, you're right. It's beautiful. The technology we have today is not what it was 10, 15 years ago. That is something we can take advantage of. There are efficiencies if you know exactly what you want to build. But to your point, a lot of the fire resistance of a structure is the envelope itself. And that it can be combustible, better if non-combustible. That's the truth. If you want to tempt fate, you can do it. But I showed you that on that video. That's a combustible siding on that house. Most importantly, the roofs. We have an expectation. You'll hear the word Class A roof, right? Probably this is something you talk about around your dinner table too. After I force my wife to watch fire tests, it's what I like to do. But the truth is, you want to think beyond that even. Think about ballasts. Class A roofs have a limited duration, and we were seeing very large embers in this fire, so you want to go beyond that. Things like metal studs are a great idea. I'll give you an example. It used to be that in this country, whether you're talking 1871, 1906, or every 5 years in between, we would see a major conflagration in one of our urban centers. Think about it. Chicago. How many times did Chicago burn down? London burned down most of it, 7 times, I believe. This is true of many of our cities. And what was the change that led to a different outcome? It was called a non-combustible building exterior. We saw an age when we were building things out of brick. It's because it let us put buildings closer together and not have to worry about that radiation heat transfer. So take it very seriously. I will say, if you don't have something within 10 to 20 feet of your structure, that radiation heat transfer isn't as big of a concern. Your next concern is ember transport. It's those brands hitting the side of your house. What that means, that's not a thermal insult that, that's something that wood can handle, but then where do the embers fall? And you have to worry about where they collect. So make that part non-combustible. So you can take a creative approach, and what I worry about is the cost of everything non-combustible is sometimes out of reach. It's very expensive. So you just have to be really smart about how you approach rebuilding the home. If I could do it and cost weren't an issue, I'd be 100% non-combustible. But I will also say this, I've seen concrete houses that are completely burned out after wildfires, and it's because we didn't treat the openings into those houses properly. So it's a mishmash.
And I can add to the metal stud. Yeah, I mean, you can build a house in metal stud. There's nothing wrong with that. We do it all the time. It's just a decision, right? And then there are architectural, obviously you have to talk to your architect, like the architectural implications to the changes that you have to do, but there's nothing difficult about it. We build in wood because it's cost effective, common, and we have a lot of carpenters that are very good at it. I think it's more like a cultural thing. Like other countries, in Latin America, all the houses are concrete masonry, right? That's just how they build. So it's not necessarily, it's not a thought process that the whole society, sat together and said, hey, what's the best way to build? It's just how we evolve as society, right? The one thing is, so fire resistance, as I was mentioning, right? Houses can be fire resistant, but I don't think fireproof, right? So you're never gonna get like a fireproof structure that, bunker style probably, but that's not where you're gonna get. So you just increase the resiliency and give you more time, and then you just need one link to fail, right? One window that breaks, or one vent, or the fence. So you have to think about everything, not only one single part of the envelope, but the whole like separation is important, right? So it's not only the wood inside that definitely burns, right?
Yeah, I might just add one other comment to add what was said. I had a friend of mine who was going to build a house out in the desert, and he was doing all metal, steel, and concrete, and it was really beautiful design, and fire resistant. He's out in the desert, but still very fire resistant. The issue he had was he couldn't find anybody who knew how to work with those materials. So he really struggled with, finding people that are skilled in that type of construction and finding those crews. So sometimes just working with more common materials in terms of cost is something to think of as well.
There's something interesting here that I just want to flag that's coming to mind for me, which is that a large part of what we're hearing today is that this kind of has to be a process that's antithetical to how in this country we're taught to think about our most valuable asset, right? We know that real estate and the ownership of property is the central driving force behind the generation of wealth in this country, right? So the goal is always buy a house, that will be our most valuable asset, protect it, and kind of think about ourselves and think about protecting that asset at all costs. And what we're learning here is that there's no way to do that in a way where that asset is protected without doing it together and without doing it communally. Because if your neighbor doesn't take the same precautions, it doesn't mean anything what you do, because you're gonna be the sneaker on the campfire. So I just want to bring back that idea of the neighborhood captain model, and I want to encourage all of us as the survivors. We have an opportunity to do this. LA has an opportunity to change the paradigm for how disaster response looks if we approach this kind of the way we have been from the beginning. The outpouring of support has been immense, but if we as the survivors decide, you know what, we're not going to do this the typical American way where this disaster recovery cuts along class and race lines and the richest people are going to have the nicest things and everybody else gets left behind. If we decide to band together with our neighbors and look out for everyone on our block and educate everyone on all of the things that we're learning in all of these spaces and take this information outward and make sure everybody gets the best expert advice, we could create one of the most fire resilient, community-minded, kind of not anti-capitalist, but within capitalism, community-spirited communities in the history of disaster response. And I just want to flag that strikes me as a really incredible opportunity and also an incredible way to protect what we have worked really hard to build. Somebody's got to have a microphone in their hand. Whoever has the mic in the back?
I have it.
Great. Okay, you'll be next.
Hi, I lost my home in the Palisades fire. I actually went to the building department yesterday, so I wanted to impart my experience to you, sir, and anyone else who's curious. They did say that if you have a permit more recent, like you did a renovation, and the assessor's office hasn't picked up that square footage, you can use that as proof if they have it on file, or if you have a record of it, as proof of additional square footage. So we built an ADU, the assessor's office doesn't show that, we can still add. They also said, though, that if you don't currently have an ADU, that could trigger a full plan check review and full permit fees to add that, because it's not like for like. Okay, my questions were about materials. We also live in an earthquake zone, so can you guys talk about what materials kind of fit both models of safety? End of question.
Very important question.
I think you can use all materials available in the market to build an air-quality ceiling home that follows the code, and a fire-resistant home. Well, fire-resistant within either Chapter 7A or the IBHSS requirements. Yeah, that can be resilient, right? So I don't think there is a specific limitation within the code to that you cannot use certain materials. Some of them may be more difficult to justify and prove to the building department. Obviously, like wood construction, metal studs, concrete masonry walls, everything is codified, so it's easier to follow. If you want to go more like alternative, you may need some more. Your structural engineer will need to provide more additional calculations or provide additional calculations to the building department. It will probably require more time and effort, but you could typically achieve what you want. Again, for one single family residential home, I will try to stay within the codified materials, which is just CMU or concrete masonry units, wood, right, metal studs, or like cinder block, which is kind of concrete masonry units. You can use brick, which have some additional limitations, and anything that is easy, better described in the code, right? Anything outside that, you may have to invest money and effort to justify to the building department. In terms of fire, I think the guidelines from Chapter 7A and the different resources that Nate mentioned, I think they cover all type of materials, right?
Yeah, there's really no specific limitation, and mostly they do that, again, because economically it's not yet possible to mandate that everything be non-combustible. And even in the commercial world, we have large buildings that are 8+ stories that are wood, and they perform very well in this seismic zone. So there's no specific limitation. It's just about how do you assemble those materials and, again, protect your envelope.
Sir?
Yes, hi. Is it on? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Hi, my name's Richard Lee Curry. I'm an At.the resident. I lost my home. And I'm kind of involved in technology all my life. I'm with the Art Center College of Design. I'm an alum. We're talking with them right now to move forward and how to move forward and look into the future. And I feel we need a paradigm shift in how we build. Wood construction is adequated in my terms. I feel that way. And I've got a contract to do 3D homes. And I've just got back from Austin, Texas. Icon, I don't know if you're familiar with Icon, but if you guys have a chance, look up Icon, see what they've developed. I went to a ranch called the Wolf Ranch. Incredible build. There's nothing, I've seen it on YouTube, but there's nothing like going there and actually, interacting with the building and the structure and to see how well it's built. It's incredible. I mean, if you look here, all this is concrete. Most commercial buildings are concrete. So I'm moving forward. I'm trying to bring that technology to At.the, especially the west side. I have 2 homes that I've had contract. I have an MOU with a contractor and a developer, and I have the equipment. And hopefully we're going to start the ADU first as a showcase to get that up as quickly as possible. I don't know if you guys have heard of laminated cross timber, which is really structurally resistant to flame, a combination of that type of wood structure. And it's amazing. There are two 3D built homes in Los Angeles that most of you don't know of, one in Upland and one in, I can't remember where the other location is. The one in Upland was built for a home shelter, and this is the contractor I'm using, and they made the structure fit the community. So it had to look like the period home. So they basically stuccoed the walls. So you would not know it was a 3D home if you didn't see it being built. The only way you could tell was the walls, when you saw the windows, that there was a 12-inch window sill that you could sit and lay plants, because they stuccoed everything, but it was as solid as can be. So I'm just bringing that out, trying to introduce that to people in At.the. I don't think there's a rush. So many people are rushing to build. It's time to slow down, look at the possibilities, and technology is there to allow us to do something different and better.
This, to be clear, this is the, just so I can get my right frame of reference, the Wolf Ranch, were those the circular homes?
No, that's the 100 homes they built out in 40 miles outside
Got
of
it.
Austin, Texas, 40 miles outside of Austin, Texas.
But it's a large 3D concrete printer that you set up and can construct. Yeah, it's super
a
cool.
gantry system,
super cool.
And they just,
It's quick.
yeah, very quick.
Yep.
The walls mainly are concrete, and then the structures, what I'm thinking is the laminated timber up above, more resistant.
Yeah, people who are interested in that, check out Wolf Ranch, but also check out Bjork Engel's group, or BIG. Bjork Engel's group, if you're interested in certain types of architecture, they're stunningly beautiful.
Yes.
And the advantage is speed. The setup, the materials cost more, but the speed is tremendous. And speed is a huge deal in construction. So the time saved does translate. Just a thought, but thank you.
Yeah, I'll say about cross-laminated timber. Yeah, we built our expansion in Pasadena with glue lam, not cross-laminated, not CLT, which is cross-laminated timber, but glue lams. They're fine. Like, I mean, they're I wouldn't say fire resistant, but they resist longer to fire than 2x4, right? And they look beautiful. From a slab point of view, the CLT, again, still combustible, but it will just take longer, right? But you wouldn't use that as a roof surface, right? You still will need like the Class A, whatever. You can use tile or shingles or whatever you want. Yeah, I like that.
We have new allowances in our codes. Even I work on high-rise buildings, and we can build high-rise buildings out of this CLT, the cross-laminated timber, if it's properly protected. They've done full-scale testing on it. It does perform exceptionally well. It is a material that you'll see used.
Under earthquakes, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
In the interest of time and not holding you guys hostage, I'm going to stick to the schedule that we committed to. But I want to point out that this is the beginning of many, many conversations and one of many, many resources that is available. And I just want to remind you that there are a lot of resources being made available to us. So if you would like to join postfirela.org, we're doing our best to keep you abreast of all of those things. There are other survivor networks as well. The way that this next session is going to work, which is really an amazing thing that is available to us now. Obviously, there's food, which is fantastic news, but there are also rows of tables down that end and rows of tables down this end of architects who are willing to answer your individual questions that are specific to your unique situation, which is really the crux of this thing. It's hard. There's no one size fits all for any of us. The one thing we're going to ask you to be mindful of is how many people are behind you waiting to talk to that architect, because there aren't enough architects to do one-on-ones with everyone. So just, be mindful of time. And we hope that you got something out of this today. I want to say a huge thank you to SCI-Arc for putting this on and organizing this, and to these gentlemen for their time and expertise. Thank you, everyone, for coming. See you out there.